Okay, welcome to the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. This is 9 a.m. Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on the agenda is citizen input. At this time, Mr. Mark Dickens.
Good morning, Mark Dickens, resident of Deschutes County. I really don't like being here, but I will 3 minutes at a time until this issue is resolved. Online under the Board of County Commissioners for Deschutes County, the title says Enhancing the Lives of Citizens by Delivering. I don't know what exactly you think you're delivering, but what you're allowing to happen to your citizens at the hands of a rogue and corrupt building official, Randy Scheid, is nothing short of been a living hell for the tax-paying citizens of this country or county and your constituents. Randy Scheid has repeatedly abused his authority and acted outside of the building code and the Oregon law. Randy Scheid has reneged numerous times on agreements made by myself or my attorney with county staff and legal, resulting in wasting tens of thousands of dollars of county resources, which is taxpayers' money and my hard-earned money. Randy Scheid has deployed some of the most dishonest and sleaziest of tactics to carry out his campaign of harassment and intimidation, including directing prospective buyers on my property to gather information and photos, then report back. I know this to be true because these folks admitted it when confronted. This was recently. My situation is not unique at all. This appears to be a common practice with Randy Scheid and his department of applying and enforcing the code only as he decides. And if you question or challenge his highly suspect interpretation of the code or do not bend to his will, you become an enemy of Randy Scheid and subject to unrelenting attacks and abuse, all funded by Deschutes County taxpayers' dollars. At the same time, Randy Scheid turns a blind eye to some of the most egregious and dangerous code violations if it's his friends. Most people I have talked to with similar stories are afraid to speak out of fear of retaliation from Randy Scheid, something I have been subject to personally. This board needs to stop abrogating its responsibility. I've complained to this board for years and intervene before more taxpayer money is wasted from costly litigation, and stop this abuse of your citizens at the hands of one unethical and vengeful individual. I extend very sincerely an open invitation to this board to sit down with me and look at all of my documents and learn all of the facts, not just what you're being told from one side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dickens. Next, Mr. Al Shirk. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. So my name is Al Shirk. I'm resident in Lapine, Deschutes County. I'm here today because, and I'm not sure exactly how this works. Never had to come to a commissioners meeting, but I don't believe I'm allowed to ask questions. But I got this brought to my attention last night that Deschutes County is petitioning for 40 acres of land to sell to Vic Russell for a mine. And reading the reasonings for it, I agree 100% with it. But I also agree with it so much as that's why we opened a mine that is 2.5 miles away from that mine. I don't understand why the county is pushing for this to begin with, when there's a mine that is a 1,200 acre approved mine for hard rock mining that is exactly 2.45 miles away. It supplies all products, the same areas that Vic Russell's pit has. This mine was open with the support of Vic Russell because he knew that, we were running out of rock in South Deschutes County. It's not where it was opened was on land that was available for leasing that we worked with Shanda Asset Managements to acquire. We spent 3 years in the process of getting that mine open for these reasons. And so I just want it to be known that there is a mine 2.5 miles away or 2.5 miles away for those purposes. So I don't know if that is, nobody was in knowledge of that mine being there, or if it just is something that's being worked out between a private party and the county commissioners for sale. I don't know exactly how that works. I don't know how to get answers to any of that. I don't know if that's a something that could be done here, can be asked, and then answered, or is that?
Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Let's talk about this offline. We can talk about it a little bit right now.
Mr. Shirk, if you have a copy of that letter to Congressman Bentz's office, you'll note that I did not sign it.
Correct. I do see that too.
Not necessarily because I don't support the concept and the need for that aggregate material, but because I didn't feel like I had enough information about the situation. And I also have concerns about, essentially, how fair it is to the taxpayers
Exactly.
to basically hand over 40 acres of valuable resource land,
Right.
without any compensation or without an exchange of some kind. So I really appreciate you sharing information about this other mine.
And that is why the mine that we have opened is Spring Butte Rock, and it is on private land. That's already private land. It's not on public land or federal lands or state lands or anything else. And that's why we put it there, was because it's already public or private property. It wasn't taking public lands away from community members.
Right. So you said the Spring Butte Rock mine is producing the same products that are proposed
Exactly.
for this 40-acre site. Can you give a sense of kind of the like the volume of supply, or how many years supply is available at that site?
Well, I can tell you that Vic Russell's mine is 30 acres, and he's been mining it for approximately 30 years. Our mine is 1,200 acres. So I'm guessing, I don't know, 7 generations worth of mine.
Okay. So that we
A lot
talked
longer
about,
than we'll be around.
we talked about the Forest Service site being 40 acres, but you're saying your lease.
We're a Degami certified or registered mine of 1,140 acres.
I would love to, if you have the kind of a write-up or
I can definitely, this all got put on my lap about 9:30 last night. So at 3:30 this morning, I found out there was a commissioners meeting. So here I am.
I mean, if there's any, the documents you submitted to Dogami to get your permit, anything like that, that just kind of has background information, I would love to see that.
I'm not.
Thank you.
But I made sure to let all the road districts understand this, and understanding that Hard Rock Supply, it's not for the private property owner, Vic Russell, that is there. It is for the community. So his supply is exhausted, and this would go to the county for public benefit. So as I say, there's an assumption in there that's not intended.
It states that it goes to the county to be sold.
Just to the private market.
Right. But I mean, it obviously being sold for Vic Russell. I mean, I'm not going to go to it. Taylor Northwest isn't going to go to it. There isn't any, Hooker Creek, Knife River. Nobody's going to go and buy the adjoining mine to Vic Russell's, because there's only one way in and one way out, and that's through Vic Russell's. So it's essentially locked into one person, or it's somebody's going to buy it just to sit on it so he doesn't have it.
So as I say, I will give you a call after this board meeting. We'll discuss more. As I say, the intention is for public benefit and good things for the community. It's not,
and that's why we
people out.
did this other mine. And Vic Russell is the one that helped me get that process going and showed me all the ways. I mean, when I started that mine, I was a beginner at it. All we did was sell rock and haul rock before that. And then once we started seeing the writing on the wall where we knew it was going to be coming to a halt, that's when we went about that process, and Vic helped us with that process. So it's not it's not a secret that it's there or anything else. The same customers that go to his pit come to our pit as of right now until that is exhausted, then they'll just come to us type thing. Instead of, because we are the nearest pit within 27 miles of Lapine. And the other one's only open 2 days a week.
Yeah,
Near-
we'll talk after this.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Is there anyone else for citizen input in the room? Is there anybody online? Okay, so seeing none. Next item is consent agenda. One set of minutes and a couple different items here,
Move approval of the consent agenda.
and I will second it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. At this time, action items, just one other note. So this is just reviewing a proclamation of the Board of Commissioners referencing R.L. Garrigas. So this is our KSJJ Rodeo Road Tour VIP that has retired recently. Just acknowledging that on Thursday, January 22nd, 2004, was designated as R.L. Garrigas Day in Deschutes County. So it's just a special moment acknowledging his retirement. There was a little bit of media coverage on this recently. And tonight there's going to be a kind of a celebration event at Boneyard Brewing, just close to here at about 5:30 tonight. But just acknowledging and thanking R.L. Garrigas for his efforts over all those years broadcasting on the airwaves here in Central Oregon.
So this is a proclamation for Deschutes County?
Yeah, to Deschutes County, R.L. Garrigas Day. So this is 2004, so, many years ago. But I'm just pointing out the history of how engaged he's been for how many years. So that's all. Just acknowledging.
Got it. Okay.
Just another note.
I was just trying to clarify whether you were
Nope.
proposing a proclamation for passage today that.
No, it was passed by the Board of Commissioners, as I say, in 2004. So just acknowledging it. Thank you. Okay, so item number 6, consideration of a contract for collective bargaining agreement between Deschutes County 911 Service District and Deschutes County 911 Employees Association 911 Supervisors.
And if we could also clarify
Oh,
that we're
yep.
convening as the governing body for the Deschutes County 911 Service District.
Thank you very much. Acknowledging that, convening as the governing body for Deschutes County 911.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, Whitney Hale, Deputy County Administrator.
Sarah Crosswhite, Deschutes County 911 Director.
Chris Perry, Deschutes County 911 Operations Manager.
We're here today for board consideration of contract number 2025-065, which is a collective bargaining agreement between the 911 Service District and the Deschutes County 911 Employees Association 911 Supervisors. The 911 Employees Association Supervisors Unit was created in 2024 after the passage of House Bill 4115. This new collective bargaining agreement is effective from July 1st of 2024 through June 30th, 2026. Staff is here to questions that the board may have about the agreement. The agreement includes a 1 to 4% cost of living adjustment based on the Consumer Price Index in fiscal years 25 and 26. It includes a 5% wage adjustment for supervisors, and health insurance benefits will be provided to employees under the same conditions as provided by the Deschutes County Health Benefits Plan. So happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is in response to legislative action, being able to have this supervisor group represented with a new collective bargaining agreement. So we're kind of adding it to the group of agreements that we have at Deschutes County proper. And it's been ratified by the union, is my understanding.
Yeah, I have no questions. I've been tracking this negotiation as it's been going along. And I'm really glad that management and the employees are able to reach a positive agreement about benefits and working conditions, and we will continue to be able to offer excellent service together.
Any other comments by management?
No, we're just really appreciative and thankful that it was successful, that everybody was cooperative and working together. And thank you guys for your support throughout
Yeah.
this.
There's a long history of just being very professional back and forth with these collective bargaining agreements across the organization. But yeah, I'm glad we were able to get to this point. Is there a motion?
I will, so as the governing body of the 911 Service District, I move approval of contract number 2025-065, a collective bargaining agreement between Deschutes County 911 Service District and the Deschutes 911 Employees Association 911 Supervisors.
And I will second it. Any other discussion?
No.
Seeing none, Commissioner Chang
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you so much. Reconvening as a Deschutes County governing body. Item number 7, consideration of extending the Deschutes County Rural Renewable Energy Development Zone.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Eric Kropp, Deputy County Administrator. I'm also on the Executive Board for EDCO. We'll do quick introductions, then I'll have some quick staff comments, and then I'll turn it over to Patricia for the presentation.
Eric Strobel, EDCO Sisters Director.
Patricia Lucas, Sun River Lapine Director. Kelsey Lucas, Senior Director of Business Development.
Steve Curley, Ready Director in Redmond.
As a quick background, in December of 2014, the Board of Commissioners at that time approved a resolution that led to the creation of the Deschutes County Rural Renewable Energy Enterprise Zone. That allowed the enterprise zone for 10 years, and that time period actually ends this June. EDCO approached the board and wanted to make a presentation to the commissioners about extending the rural renewable energy enterprise zone, and so that's what we're here to discuss today. I know there's several questions that Commissioner Chang has. Those have been forwarded to EDCO. At the end of today's presentation, the options for the board are to if there are still additional questions to be answered, we can come back with answers to those questions, or the board can direct staff to work with EDCO to schedule a public hearing for the consideration of the extension. Part of that process is to notify the impacted taxing districts so that they have an opportunity to comment at the public hearing. Or if the board does not want to extend the zone, that's another option for the board as well. With that, I'll turn it over to Patricia.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, Honorable Commissioners and Administrator Lilac. I just wanted to give you a little background on how the Rural Renewable Energy Development Zone program works. It's a type of energy enterprise zone that offers a tax exemption incentive to encourage new investment in renewable energy. The incentive is a 100% exemption from property taxes normally assessed for the first 3 to 5 years of project operation. The program consists of an initial 3-year exemption that may be extended for up to an additional 2 years through the agreement with the local government sponsor. Individual government units with property tax authority in Oregon include counties, cities, school districts, hospitals, libraries, and fire districts. The total amount of property that can qualify is subject to a locally set cap within each zone that cannot exceed $250 million in initial market value, with each project valued based on its real market value on the assessment date of the first year that the exemption is applied. Local governments apply to the Oregon Business Development Department for red zone designation. Once designated, if a project meets the eligibility requirements, the tax exemption must be granted. Once the exemption expires after 3 to 5 years, the project is taxed based on its assessed value, and tax revenues are distributed to the local taxing units with property tax authority in the code areas where the project is located. Eligible investments include They must harness wind, geothermal, solar, biomass, or other unconventional forms of energy to generate electricity or produce, distribute, or store any of a wide variety of biofuels. Qualifying projects must meet the same criteria stipulated under the Standard Enterprise Zone program. They are required to create full-time employment with a new project, although it may be waived by a local government if the cost of the investment is at least $5 million. A city, county, or several contiguous counties may set up a red zone that covers all the territory in the jurisdiction outside the urban growth boundary of any metropolitan area sizable city. In Deschutes County case, both Redmond and Bend would be excluded. The total amount of qualifying property among one or more projects is subject to a locally set cap within each zone, which can be no greater than $250 million in the initial market value among all projects in a red zone designation. As Eric indicated, this was approved in December of 2014, and we're here today to request that the commissioners consider extending the red zone for an additional 10 years. The state has informed us that if that approval is granted, the new expiration date would be June 30th, 2036. I'm happy to answer questions, as are any of the rest of us here representing EDCO and this request.
Great. Please take it away, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you for joining us today to discuss this topic. I want to start by saying that we desperately need additional electricity generation in the state of Oregon and in our community. I'm really excited to see the development of more clean energy that emits less greenhouse gases. And I'm also really excited by the idea of having a whole lot of jobs in construction of renewable energy projects in our community. So those are all reasons that I would be very sympathetic to the extension of the zone and the offering of these tax exemptions. At the same time, I'm only aware enough to have a sense of, but not knowledgeable enough to really understand how much benefit other counties in Eastern Oregon have received from the development of large-scale rural renewable energy projects. And I hear about strategic investment partnerships. I hear about these gain share agreements. I hear about millions of dollars of investment going to local governments from renewable energy project developers. And my concern is that if we implement this rural renewable energy development zone, we may be giving away what leverage we have to request these kinds of agreements from project developers. At the same time, I'm tracking in recent times 2 very large solar development proposals for Deschutes County. One basically just southeast of the city of Redmond, and one in the Lapine area. And these projects have the added wrinkle of not being on private lands the way that projects are in, places like Sherman County. And so that raises additional questions for me about how we secure community benefit from these projects, or community investment benefit from these projects. So that's, really all of the questions that I have around this proposal to extend this zone are related to how does Deschutes County get a piece of the investment for this project. There are a whole lot of other questions around. I mean, if we proceed with this, we're going to want to bring in all the other taxing districts and ensure that not just Deschutes County is getting a piece of the benefit, but that there is something for the other taxing districts as well. And I'm not asking us to get, full assessed tax value of these projects worth of benefit, because I realize that would probably be quite a lot of money. But again, I'm hearing about other counties where, these renewable energy developers are making, multi-million-dollar investments in communities. And that is something that would be very beneficial at this moment in time in Deschutes County, where we're basically moving into a real belt tightening period for the county. So with that introduction, I'd like to just run through a couple of questions. My first question is, or if you need to discuss for a minute, go ahead. My first question is, I have no idea what the potential valuation of a 700 megawatt solar project is in the first place. So without knowing what kind of tax valuation we're talking about, potential tax valuation we're talking about, I have no basis to be able to say, oh, well, $5 million would be a great deal then. Or, what a reasonable request to project developers might be.
Did you say 700 megawatts? Okay, just doing math, sorry.
The one south of Redmond is proposed for 700 megawatts. The one south of Lapine is, I believe, over 500 megawatts.
Well, she's doing math. Kelsey is also our Prineville Crook County director and has worked on a few of these programs in Crook County. So she has some background and experience with not only the RED, but also the SIP and another program called the Pilot program. So there are, as you referred to, Commissioner Chang, several programs that a company could take advantage of. So I'll turn it back to Kelsey.
There are a lot of variables, but based on projects that we've seen in Crook and Jefferson County for much smaller scale, more like 50-ish megawatts, that could be up to 1.25 billion for a project of that size.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. Kelsey, is there a certain number per panel, or how is that calculated? Well, that's the thing. It depends on what materials they use, but based on the materials that we have used in those other counties, that would be a rough estimate.
Thank you.
Could you clarify that number, $1.25 million?
$billion
The
of
total
investment
capital.
for the project. Yeah,
Like 1.25 billion to build it.
correct.
For how
Yeah,
many megawatts?
700.
Oh, for 700. Okay.
Yeah,
Right. Okay.
So that's assessed value that depreciates over time.
correct.
So that's
Yeah.
total cost of putting it in.
I mean,
Yeah, they have to replace the panels pretty frequently and they upgrade that technology a lot. It's kind of like the data center industry where the technology is always changing. So it's kind of a constant iteration of.
yeah, I wanted, that was actually my next question, was about depreciation. So I mean, if we were talking about a tax exemption of 3 to 5 years, how much of that, how much does that 1.25 billion depreciate in a 3 or a 5 year period?
I'll jump in here. So we're not sure. We actually have a meeting shortly after this meeting with the Department of Revenue, and they are going to talk to us about how they value those projects and how quickly they depreciate. So we will have that information. We have those same questions as well, Commissioner Chang, so we can get that information to you here hopefully soon.
Great, thank you. Kelsey, maybe you can just talk a little bit about your experience in Crook County. How does, the potential assessed valuation of a project then get translated into some kind of a, community benefit payment or investment?
The way they did it in Crook County for the red zone, pretty much every project I'm aware of that has used it in Crook or Jefferson, they've gone with 5 years, which that goes through county approval on an individual basis anyways. they did add the school support fee, so that would apply to those 5-year agreements now, but they pay in the 4th and 5th years, just like payment in lieu of taxes, basically. So you can write that into the red zone agreement, and that would just go through county resolution. And everyone, all the companies that have utilized the program have agreed to that. For the 3-year, like I said, we haven't had anyone use that, but that would just be administrative approval. So it would be, they would just have to qualify to use it. And then after the 3 years, they would be taxed as usual. And then the land companies always pay taxes on that, no matter the exemption.
So, so for the 3-year exemptions, there isn't any kind of a payment in lieu of taxes. And then for the 5-year agreement in years 4 and 5, you get some kind of, you're negotiating some kind of an agreement, an investment at that point.
Yeah. So I believe those are all public too, so I can send you one from Crook County. But
Yeah.
it would depend on whatever is best for you guys. You write that into the resolution, so there's no like set amount for that. It would, for the size of this project, I assume it would be significantly different than the one that we have in Crook County.
But I mean, is there any kind of, like, if I said, like, is there like a ratio of, okay, if the assessed valuation might be X, we're getting a payment that's, 10% of that, or
They just negotiated with the companies. There wasn't any real formula. They used the same amount for all the projects there, which they're relatively the same size. But
Okay. And so we've heard about these different instruments, strategic investment partnerships, these share agreements. You mentioned a pilot. Is that a state pilot, or which one do they use in Crook County?
so there's 2 pilot programs. There's the pilot payment associated with the red zone for those 4th and 5th years. And then there's a pilot program, which I believe it was Senate Bill 154 was passed. So it's kind of an interesting program. It's not regulated by Business Oregon necessarily. The Department of Revenue works with it, but it's passed through the county. So the company gets an abatement for up to 20 years, and then they pay between $5,500 and $7,000 per megawatt of energy produced to the county for that.
Okay.
So Commissioner Chang, we have some written documentation we were able to compile after we were provided with your questions. If that would be helpful, we can provide that to you now.
That'd be great. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
So this document compares the red zone, the SIP, and that pilot program. The first 2 being Business Oregon, the third one being more of a DOR county program.
Great. Thank you for this. I'm not good at reading on the fly, so I'll take
That's,
some time to digest.
yeah, it's 4 pages. You're fine.
Yeah. One other question that I have right now is, do you have a sense of what other counties across the state have the red zone, and which ones are actually actively doing projects? Because we had it for 10 years and there weren't any projects.
That's the thing, is I feel like a lot of counties have it just as a tool to use. They may not necessarily have projects that are using it. I'm not sure how many actively use it. I believe there's 13 counties in the state that have zones designated, and typically the rural counties, it's the whole county is the zone, versus like the enterprise zone is based on census tracts or 4 different factors of distressed communities. And then, like Patricia said, the Deschutes County one, it does not include the Bend and Redmond UGB, but everything else would be part of the red zone. But yeah, I would say there are more projects popping up, more large scale ones like you've mentioned. So I don't know how that will change in the future, but a lot of people just have it available to use if needed, I would say.
were you going to say something? No. Okay.
Yes. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
so one of the other factors that we look at when considering this, because there are very few incentives available in Oregon to attract new businesses. And one issue that we're bumping up against is the availability of electricity and all of the projects in the pipeline. We keep hearing from especially Pacific Power, and Kelsey can address that more because that's in her area, and mine is Midstate Electric Cooperative, and so far we're okay, but as the demand continues, it's going to be more difficult for us to supply the electrical needs that these businesses that we desperately want here that we'll be able to accommodate.
No, I mean, for decades, our major one of our major competitive advantages in Oregon was cheap, abundant power, and that is slipping away from us right now. So, and certainly, in our community, there's, it is, I hear some of the horror stories about local transmission and other infrastructure within our utilities, being loaded to the point where, we want to have water trucks near various stations or substations around our community. There's absolutely a need for additional generation. And again, I'm really excited that this would encourage clean energy development in our community. If I could ask one more question. So we have a couple of, they're not huge solar farms. You think of the ones, east of Bend, the one between Bend and Redmond. Are those just not big enough to have taken an interest in using the red zone, or why do we have solar projects that didn't use it?
Yeah, I think based on the amount they could have used it, they may have A, not known it was available, or B, the investment may have been too low for those projects. But I think that in my experience, more companies are moving away from the red zone for incentives. Just, I feel like it has its own niche. Like smaller projects tend to use the red zone because there's that $250 million cap. So it's a good break as they're getting up and running before they're actually making revenue on producing power. And then the SIP is used by larger projects. And then that puts money into the community throughout the period, or throughout the abatement as well over the 15 years, because that builds over time. So communities and businesses, I feel like in general, not just renewable energy, have been looking more at that program. But the red zone is a nice, like, lower tier option for companies that may not have $150 million investment on the table that would qualify for that.
So we should think about all of these, the red, the SIP, the pilot, as like discrete pathways to a tax abatement. They don't interact with each other.
Correct. You can't use multiple. You have to choose one of the three.
Okay. And I assume that we would, anyone who wants to do a project in Deschutes County is going to be interested in negotiating some kind of tax abatement. So they'll come asking for one of these, but for the red, we'd be basically, if we don't have it in place, then it's hard to activate.
Right. So all of these would go through your approval, all three programs. The only thing that wouldn't would be a 3-year red zone agreement, but a 4 or 5 year red zone, yes, a SIP, yes, and a pilot, yes. So you would be considering those on a case by case basis.
So with a 3-year red zone request, they would just automatically be eligible.
Yeah, as long as their investment qualifies, and if it's over 5 million, you have the option to waive the job requirement. So you do get a say in that, but you also don't have to do that. Most of the projects, in my experience, have at least one full-time person, which is what's required. If it's a new project to the zone anyways, they have to increase by 10%, which if they don't exist would be one job. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, that is correct.
So Kelsey, can you describe how the county staff would be involved in that process, even if it didn't go before the county commission? Would it go to the?
The
assessor's
assessor,
office?
yeah. So the assessor still approves that and it has to meet the investment requirements and like I said, that land is always taxed. It's just the property being put on the land that's used in the business process that is exempted.
And that's similar to the current enterprise zone
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. So when we're looking at this kind of weird new situation with the BLM's Western Solar Project, the land isn't taxed now, so that's out of the equation regardless. We would just be talking about what.
Company on it, I believe they do pay taxes, right?
Yeah, we've done, Scott, the county assessor, has done some research on that, and based on what Department of Revenue has told him is if a private company puts a project on BLM land, the dirt would become taxable. We're going to verify that this afternoon in our meeting with them. But it is not a significant amount of what would be taxed. The valuation of the land itself is going to be minimal, so it's not going to bring in a lot of tax dollars, but the equipment that would go on that land, of course, would be more significant in this case. So we'll verify that because that question did come up, and it is unique that federal land would be taxed. So we're going to make sure that is correct, but that's what Scott is telling us so far.
Great, thank you. I don't think I have any further questions. Understanding those questions about the rate of depreciation that'd be helpful in addition, and I'd love to take some time to just read through these these different pathways. But so if we were deciding today whether to go to hearing or not, I'd like another week to just do some homework before we.
Well, this is January. We're talking about just expiring at the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. So we've got a few months that would even give us, plenty of time to talk about this. I definitely want to learn more also. So I support not making a decision today, but doing our homework on this.
And we'll be happy to, I'll work with EDCO to help facilitate the questions or the answers to the questions back, and then also rescheduling this when it's ready.
But I got some other thoughts, but Nick?
Just a follow-up question. I appreciate the question about the county staff's role and the assessor's role. And I understand based on the discussion that the programs are included in the resolution. So if it's the SIP, the pilot, the whatever it is, they're in the resolution that adopts it. So if those are adopted into the resolution, I understand the assessor's role. Who then negotiates the terms of the agreement? Is that something EDCO would do on the county's behalf? Is that something the county staff takes on to negotiate the terms of the community service fee or whatever the case may be? I'm just curious what that.
Typically the county with their counsel, but EDCO is always happy to sit in on those as applicable.
I was just curious what that next is. Okay.
And it's different, I think, depending on the program, correct?
Yeah, it depends which districts. Like a SIP may be a little different because it's a little complicated. 75% of impacted taxing districts get these payments throughout the time of the exemption, and it doesn't include education. So we don't have a SIP agreement. We went through the full process though for a project that didn't pan out in Crook County. So it would have been city, county, and fire department would have split that. And then they had an intergovernmental agreement on how that was split up for the project. And it was based on like franchise fees for power. So like it differed between jurisdictions, but yeah, each one will have like a little bit of a unique handling on the county side, because you may have those IGAs for some of them, red zone, typically not.
Thank you.
So big picture. So this is economic development for Central Oregon staff in front of the Board of Commissioners here. We're partners side by side. We're trying to, raise the levels for everybody here. Traded sector jobs, economic activity, payroll. So that's the goal there. Renewable energy projects can be large capital, but also it can be the driver for future economic activity too, having that electricity available. thank you very much for your experience and expertise in this, because it's very interesting. I'm thinking, 10 years ago, my signature's on this a resolution from 10 years ago. It was 50 or 75 megawatt type fields that were like, oh, wow, that's going to be big. And now we're talking 700 megawatts. So it's just, almost times 10 is what the scope of this could be. But also I'm thinking back, it was biomass too, what's an interesting conundrum. And I go back to the cost of power. In fact, Commissioner Chang, this is our common ground from way back in the day. It was going to be 12 to 14 cents out the door wholesale for the biomass effort in La Pine. Twice, like 4 times as much as Mid-State Electric right now, right? But all of a sudden, maybe we're growing into that a little bit. And then, yeah, exactly. But the concept of, well, no, we don't want to combust anything. We want to save the environment. But as I say, I always juxtapose that from the forest fires we're seeing. It would have been nice to have a biomass plant burning as much as we could in a controlled environment, but we can't quite get there as a society. Geothermal is up on the side of Newberry. That'd be federal land lease again, but that's big capital. And we've had a show in, the slides in front of us, and they're talking, as I say, I get it back to pennies per kilowatt hour. So 4.5 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's what they were talking about there. So they think that's maybe cost effective. I don't have a feel for solar right now with the market. Do we know what's their wholesale sale price on that? And I know sometimes that ends up being proprietary, who signs a contract with who, if it's local or across the state, like Portland could buy our electrons here and they're paying a lot more. There's a lot of things going on there. Is there a industry standard for what solar sells for, or is it publicly available?
We have a electric co-op representation in the audience. We could ask to see, to hear about what kind of offers are being made.
Who are you referring to? That's Mr. Solid Waste here. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so what does that look like? Just general wholesale?
I don't know the answer to that. Our situation is unique. It's not a large federal project like that. It's basically they can't build projects unless there's a permitted user. So it's B2B so far in Crook County. So
okay, so that's, yeah. Was to say that because sometimes it's kind of known information, other times it's not. And I've run into that a few times. I remember I toured the H Power plant in Hawaii just to learn about, you're, burning waste and you're creating electricity, and I asked him, what are the numbers behind this? And he said, not public information, and it's all set by the legislature. And it's like 30 cents or 40 cents or some big number, but that's not free market system at that point. That's multiple values there. But then also batteries. Batteries could be a big capital that could end up on these projects also. So we're not even talking about that, that 1.25 billion, is that these battery systems at all, or?
That would not include a battery
Yeah.
system.
So, and that's the next step is, putting batteries next to these or integrated with them somehow so we can flatten that duck curve that we all know about. So
The SIP agreement that Umatilla County shared with me was for wind, solar, and battery project combined.
So as I say, putting it back to, signing a document 10 years ago, that was kind of the fuzzy future, knowing that, hey, maybe something will happen someday. And now we're talking about redoing it for another 10 years. So it is a very interesting topic. As I say, as our EDCO professionals, traded sector efforts, I will look to you as being the experts here, and thank you very much for providing this information. We do want to be strategic, and as I say, if we get more electricity online, that can be for residential, but also those industrial purposes, which it seems are be right around the corner also. So just putting it all in perspective for what I think we know here. I know large solar, or solar specifically, is kind of a 20-year or some number horizon. In fact, because, panels will degrade over time. I mean, is there a current status about that? Also the solar fields have recovery agreements, decommissioning agreements or whatever that we want to call them too. So does that trigger what's the current status on some of that for the projects you've seen?
They're constantly replacing those. They either go out, or like I said, the technology is getting upgraded. So they maybe have like a 3 to 5 year life cycle, I would say. I can get an updated number on that for you,
Well,
but
that's fine. But yeah, I mean, is this a long-term 100-year deal, or is it something that will kind of degrade over time and then it's truly just removed from the landscape? And I don't know that it's going to be removed, but on the horizon that we see right now,
I feel like it's too early
yeah,
to
so we don't know.
see because most of our projects in the region, they're on leased land and they're still under 10 years old.
Yep.
So
Yeah, so that's just
that's-
speculation for whatever
yeah.
we put in an agreement at that point. So
I'm sure that the projects that are being developed, that are being proposed on the federal lands will have some kind of provisions for, at the end of the life of this project, you will remediate the site.
Yeah.
If I could also
Commissioner
just-
Chang, sorry, I'm working to learn more specifically about that project just south of Redmond. So hopefully I'll be able to get some information on that. I'm not sure how timely that'll be, but I am working on that to ask us some of the questions that you're asking here on a more specific basis.
I've been snooping around a bit myself.
The remediation, it's kind of like the rock quarry conversation. Any leased land where they're using it for a conditional use purpose, they're supposed to remediate. And some of the projects also have like grazing land just like around the projects because it was traditionally used for that. So there are different directions you can go, but they should return it to its original state if they do up and leave.
great.
I don't know when exactly we're thinking to bring this back to make the decision on a hearing or not. It'll be great to have, to let Commissioner Adair get up to speed. That'd be one thing. And also I just want to offer that there is quite a lot of experience in other counties that we're familiar with these kinds of choices of how to work with a renewable project developer to get some community benefit. Umatilla County, Lake County, Sherman County, and we could. I'm guessing that we could call on county commissioners from or Judge Tobolskis from Sherman County to share some of their experience with us as well if we wanted to do another agenda item like that. Kind of what else have we learned? Let's hear from some other counties about how they handle these negotiations. Really, that's an option.
But I also wonder, who's out in the wings waiting for us to do this or not do this. I mean, I think there's probably, the big projects that are being proposed are looking for this. So as I say, let's work together on this. No decision today. But yeah, we'll see where we can take it. And thank you, as I say, for your expertise in the domain already. Let's make a wise choice in here.
Maybe commit to bring this back for decision on the hearing within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and that's fine. Yeah. I just think of it as it'll have its own kind of time frame, but we got months to work on this. Great. Well, thank you very much. Got us thinking hard on this one now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, item number 8, special project grants, mid-year updates.
And Chair, I'll say we're fortunate to have Jen Patterson with us and because she's on jury duty, but not called in today. So
You didn't get called today, but
Check in every day.
still 2 more weeks of opportunity there.
I checked in a few times during the holidays because I had a window recently too. But I think, about 4 days into it, they said they didn't have anything, so they let us all go about 4 days in. Yeah, so we'll see.
You'll see.
But
I'm happy to
also-
serve though and do my citizen duty.
Yes, thank you.
We're also fortunate to have Jen because she was working late last night with our wolf depredation committee.
Very engaging committee meeting last night. For the record, Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager for the county. I am here as facilitator for our special projects, grants, mid-year updates. One quick update before we get started. Unfortunately, Lisa Sills was going to present from the Upper Basin Water Collaborative. I always say that backwards. I think I got that right.
Just Deschutes Basin.
Thank you. Sorry. Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative. That was it. I just typed it out 30 seconds ago. Unfortunately, she took ill this morning and will not be here. We do have another mid-year update next week for the Newberry Regional Partnership, and we're going to add them to that agenda item if it works out. I just emailed Brenda and Nick, so hopefully we'll hear from them next week. So here this week, we have two partners. We have the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project with Jacob Fritz, who will go first, and then we have Rachel Cardwell with Friends of the Children. So with that, I invite Jacob to come up to the podium to present his update. Yep.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. Good morning, commissioners. As Jen mentioned, my name is Jacob Fritz. I am the program manager for the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project and here to provide the interim report for the Special Projects Grant. So as just a brief reminder about the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project, the DCFP brings together diverse stakeholders to engage deeply with the Deschutes National Forest, providing input, feedback, and guidance on their plans and projects for active management and restoration, as well as engages deeply with our community members to build social license, understanding, and public trust for the work that's happening on our public forest land, our national forest lands. The DCFP improves community safety by supporting wildfire resiliency work, and the DCFP engages in some of the most socially visible and complicated issues throughout the Deschutes National Forest to maintain that public trust and develop solutions in meeting rooms rather than courtrooms. So I have three bodies of work that I would like to highlight here today for the interim report. The first is the work the DCFP was involved in associated with the West Bend Prescribed Fire Pilot Project that I'm sure you're all aware of that was conducted this past spring. The second really gets at that point of socially visible and potentially contentious mediation, and which is consensus building around a specific issue of balancing core habitat and biodiversity values with recreation and access values. And finally, highlighting some of our accomplishments, engaging with our community members and building and maintaining that social license that I mentioned before. So as I mentioned, to begin, I'll start with the West Bend Prescribed Fire Project, which I won't go into too much detail about the pilot in particular, but rather the part that the DCFP was able to play this year. I do want to mention that for many, many years, the Deschutes Collaborative has been active in reducing barriers to the implementation of prescribed fire, which ultimately, at least in part, set the stage for the selection of the West Bend pilot area as the location, one of 3 locations nationwide for a pilot project of this magnitude and with this amount of attention that was paid to it. However, this year, we engaged deeply with partners and helped to plan and implement an indoor air quality study, the goal of which was to develop a better understanding of community smoke exposure when indoors. This is important for a couple of reasons. The first being there's a significant lack of indoor air quality data that's publicly available. There's quite a bit of outdoor air quality data, but we don't know what sort of exposure levels our community members receive when they're indoors. And again, this is important because one of the most common recommendations by public health officials and others is to remain indoors during smoke events, whether prescribed fire or wildfire. Similarly, one of the most commonly reported mitigation measures reported by community members and their family is staying indoors. So the DCFP, along with partners such as Deschutes County Public Health and researchers at the Oregon Institute of Technology, worked to design a study that ultimately placed sensors throughout Bend, distributed evenly geographically throughout the greater Bend area, to collect indoor air quality data from May through September. So we have data on prescribed fire smoke events as well as wildfire smoke events. That data is in the hands of the Oregon Institute of Technology, and we should be seeing analysis in the next 4 to 6 weeks, I would say. The second study I'd like to highlight is the communication study, which had the goal of improving the efficacy of public communications that lead to reduced community smoke exposure. The results of which will not be utilized solely by the Deschutes Collaborative, but by all partners involved in this pilot project to share the data and the learnings that we've gained from this study. Specifically, it focused on 3 aspects: public understanding and support for the use of prescribed fire in fire-adapted ecosystems such as the Deschutes National Forest. It focused on the primary communication methods that folks were seeing or hearing, what strategies or methods to reach community members are really working, not just by the DCFP or by the Deschutes National Forest, but any partner that's communicating about smoke safety and fire events. And finally, we focus questions on the mitigation methods that community members take to protect themselves and their families during smoke events. This data is in the hands of partners at the University of Oregon's Smoke Center. We have received some preliminary analysis, but are awaiting some more nuanced analysis to come from them. I estimate that it's along a similar timeline. In the next 4 to 6 weeks, we should see this and be able to share those results with all of our partners. The next body of work that I would like to highlight for the interim report is our consensus building work. And this again really gets at one of the core aspects of the value that the Deschutes Collaborative brings to Deschutes County. In our unique ability to bring in diverse stakeholders to work through potentially contentious issues, striking a balance between values, in meeting rooms rather than courtrooms. Right now, we are particularly focused on striking a balance and working with biodiversity and wildlife advocates, as well as recreation and access values. This is a project that is important as we do see, unfortunately, declining biodiversity and wildlife population numbers throughout the Deschutes National Forest. The Deschutes National Forest is not unique in that aspect, but it is there. And we similarly see a growing need for access and recreation infrastructure, which serves our communities socially and economically. So we are working with the Deschutes Trails Coalition and Deschutes National Forest to host a series of value mapping workshops to identify patterns in recreation and access values. We then plan to use or overlay that data with data from a core habitat model that we've developed in partnership with the Nature Conservancy, and use that information to facilitate conversations about acceptable trade-offs and opportunities for synergy. And we're confident in completing this work in the coming year. And finally, I just want to highlight the extensive work that our outreach subcommittee has performed this previous year in engaging our community members in efforts to develop and maintain that social license I spoke to a little bit before. Some activities included intensive public education during prescribed fire season, specifically in conjunction with the pilot project. Distribution of information at popular gathering areas, community newsletters, and recreation stores, building active presence online, and contributing articles and publications to Ben Magazine and The Source. However, I would be remiss not to highlight some of the what I call deeper touch outreach opportunities that we really invest a lot of time and effort into getting face-to-face with community members and engaging in dialogue, both bringing the most accurate scientific information as well as being there to answer questions and concerns from community members. To that end, To that end, there were three particular pieces that I wanted to highlight. The first being a biking field trip with recreation industry leaders, which was extremely successful, allowing us to bike between different areas of the forest, highlighting the various phases of restoration and situating experts in the field to speak to what recreation industry leaders were seeing on the ground. This had a powerful effect, and we received numerous requests to host similar events this coming year, which we plan to do. Similarly, we hosted speaker events in both Lapine and Sisters, bringing experts in forestry to the community members for presentations, as well as panel style question and answer, which again gets at the imperative aspect of addressing community questions and concerns, and ensuring that there's transparency surrounding the work that's happening on our national forest lands. And finally, we were very active tabling at numerous popular community events, which allowed us some smaller group interactions, but again, to that same end of addressing community questions and concerns. So those are the updates for our interim report, but I wanted to end by thanking you all for your continued support for the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project. And if we have time, happy to take questions.
Well, as you know, I sit on the steering committee, so I don't have a lot of questions. You should go ahead and.
Is this a registered nonprofit organization, or what's the entity at this point?
The Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project operates under a fiscal sponsor, so we're technically a program within a nonprofit, but our fiscal sponsor is a registered 501c3. Yes.
What's the general budget of the operation at this point?
The general budget, annual budget, is right around $200,000.
And then are there any other big public players on that? I guess that's where I'm going with that. So we're putting $10,000 in. Where's the rest of the money coming from?
The rest of the money comes from numerous different sources: federal, state, county. There are some city dollars involved, as well as private foundations. So it's a wide diversity of funding.
Has the collaborative discussed biomass? Is there support or opposition to biomass, like a 20 megawatt biomass plant somewhere?
The DCFP doesn't currently have official recommendations or what we call zones of agreement regarding biomass, but speaking very generally, there is widespread support in the DCFP and an acknowledgement that there needs to be additional investment in the forest products industry, whether that looks like biomass or other methods to both support industry and jobs, as well as utilize small materials that's being removed, especially in relation to the fuels reduction projects. Generally speaking, yes, there is support for those sorts of projects.
We might also mention the DCFP tracking of the Mount Bachelor project, the Mount Bachelor Biomass Heat Project.
Yes, the DCFP also has been involved in conversations with Mount Bachelor. I have not actually heard where that stands and the progress that Mount Bachelor has made towards completing that project. But thank you, Commissioner, that would certainly be an example of the DCFP support for biomass projects.
Well, so just a thought is like a heating district, and we've seen that around the state, utilizing pellets or rough chips. And I know rough chips is the key because it's less processed, but looking for industrial opportunities for those captured BTUs that are on the forest floor. So just some fun ideas. When we talk about forest recreational discussions, is that scope creep from Collaborative Forest Project? I mean, I hadn't really thought about that before, so it's just a kind of a random thought for today. But let's acknowledge that we're going to receive smoke when there's prescribed burns. Let's understand that this is good because it's going to reduce forest fire. And now the Collaborative Forest Project is talking about recreational balance and forest utilization.
If I could just say, the Forest Collaboratives, part of their job is to persuade the community that we need to actively restore our forests: thinning, brush mowing, prescribed fire. the recreation community is basically one of the best conduits to communicate with the community about why we need to restore our forests, how we need to restore our forest, and kind of what I would say is you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet kind of discussion. You know, there's you have a sense of how many people are moving to our community on an annual basis from places like Seattle, Texas, who have no idea what managing dry forest ecosystems is about. So meeting them where they recreate, that's one of the primary places where people come in contact with the national forest. So meeting them where they recreate is a great opportunity to help them understand, John Williams from Quicksilver Contracting is a good guy. He's out here thinning out all these trees and, providing that service in an incredibly cost-effective way because he's built markets for small diameter wood. No, we're the ones who are setting the fire in the forest this May, and we absolutely need to do that so that when August comes, a fire doesn't rip through all these fuels and burn the city of Bend to the ground, or the city of La Pine, or the city of Sisters. So, meeting people as recreationists is actually a really important communications and social license building opportunity.
But if there's a $200,000 budget, I'm just wondering who else is investing in this, and it just could be skewed by interest who's investing in it. That's all I'm acknowledging right now. So just keeping an eye on it. That's why we're here today.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the question. I do agree with the comments that Commissioner Chang made. And I would add on by saying that in my view, I think that it's imperative for the DCFP to consistently be looking for opportunities to work with different stakeholders and value holders. The recreation and tourism industry holds 2 seats on the steering committee and are significant values here in Central Oregon and on the forest. So while I spoke to balancing wildlife and biodiversity values with these recreation and access values, those two do not interact within a silo. There's also consistently other values involved in those conversations. Certainly appreciate the scope creep that helps. That question is an important one consistently to be asked, especially within nonprofits. So as we don't get too far away from our mission or spread too thin.
Well, yeah. So increasing the pace and scale of forest, management and fuel reduction and resiliency. So as I said, and then there's reasons to welcome more people to the table, but just if we're investing in something, it's fire resiliency and forest health.
But I get, we're going back in history on a regular basis at today's meeting. If I could go back in history a little bit, Commissioner Alan Unger, when he brought our proposal for the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program to DC to advocate for it, and was able to secure $10 million of supplemental funding for forest restoration and fuels reduction work here over a 10-year period. That application didn't just include vegetation management. It also included trying to eliminate or close unnecessary roads or trails. It also included some watershed restoration and stream work components. So that was the project that was originally proposed to the review committee in DC for this project. And frankly, the collaborative, the Forest Service has fallen behind on the road decommissioning and closure and trail closure goals and targets that the DCFP set for itself in the very beginning. So that all just goes to say that this is not a mission creep at all. It's part of a holistic approach to restoring the forest. And well, just one more thing about the value of this core habitat work that's happening. When we are debating habitat value of private lands in Deschutes County during all kinds of land use discussions, there's always this kind of fallback argument of, 80% of Deschutes County is federal or public land. That's where the habitat is. But it's actually critically important for that land to actively be managed and restored for habitat value in order to make that claim. Because the Deschutes National Forest could be crappy habitat too. But the vegetation management and doing things like trying to, what happened in this most recent trails planning effort west of Bend in the last year and a half is a great example. They were able to take a habitat look as well as a recreation look and eliminate something like 15 miles of trail and unnecessary road, and at the same time put in another 15 or so miles of new trail and road to kind of optimize, make the recreation better, the access better, and at the same time as that they were swapping those out, create some new undisturbed chunks, some big core habitat areas. That wouldn't, the Deschutes Collaborative really helped to push that. So, in order to maintain good habitat in the national forest so that we can care less about habitat on private lands, we really need this work to happen.
So how about long-term camping? Has that come up as a discussion? Because that's the conundrum we're in right now. We've got this 2-week stay maximum on federal lands, BLM and Forest Service. We kind of lost track of it. The culture of the forest. Let's celebrate and enjoy our public lands, but let's not get them abused. Not that I'm putting that on you. I'm just wondering what's been discussed.
Frankly, that isn't an issue that we've dove into deeply. I think it's been acknowledged and it's widely recognized as a significant problem. I would actually use that example as a potential area of mission creep. I'm not sure that regulating camping long or short term is within the purview of the DCFP, and that would rely with law enforcement and with the Forest Service in particular. So the short answer is it's recognized as an obstacle and may lie outside of the scope of the DCFP's mission.
I just know, we have the Overland Expo in Redmond, and it's big, isn't it? It's just amazing how people come from around the country and promote everything. So as I say, the upside of this is wonderful. Let's go overland. Let's go spend the night next to some, ridge or stream or whatever. But we all need to fight for that culture of let's not think of this as long-term, housing opportunities. And then because then our nonprofits stumble over each other trying to get resources for a person struggling out there, which ends up being a big pile of garbage that we'll clean up. So just sharing that scenario.
I guess I would also just say that managing the road and trail network and eliminating unauthorized roads and trails out in the forest, which is a real thing. People are busting through trails and unauthorized 2-tracks all the time. Managing that is actually a really good way to ensure that people are only camping in certain places. But one other thing is the collaborative has been tracking the Cabin Butte fuels reduction project for many years, many years. That's the one that's centered around China Hat Road, and we haven't had a steering committee meeting since the announcement of the massive 30,000 acre closure that's going to happen out there for a year. But I'm sure that it's going to be a topic of discussion at the collaborative, and we'll talk about whether that's something that the collaborative needs to help to explain to the community, just like we need to explain prescribed fire smoke to the community in order to get that restoration work done.
Great. So another note I wrote down here is just keep it simple. you know, we can study these things to death, but just understanding the high priority of what we want to do. You know, this is the forest we're trying not to love to death, and we're all in that same common area, you know, so. Well, I'm excited, you know, to support this. We've supported it for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Rachel Cardwell with Friends of the Children.
Well, hello. Thank you. Just with Brenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much for hearing me today and giving me the opportunity to provide this update. We have long been the grateful recipients of your support of our long-term professional mentoring program here in Central Oregon. As you'll see in the report I provided this morning, the vast majority of the children enrolled in our program are residents of Deschutes County. We spread from Lapine to Sisters to Bend to Redmond for 78 of the 80 children that are currently enrolled in our program. Last year, we saw a huge boom in enrollment, completing our first ever cohort in South County, all of whom are residents of Lapine. We plan to, and then we added last spring an additional 16 children in the Bend and Redmond area that we have historically served. We will add another 16 children to our program this coming spring. That process we have already embarked on conversations with our school partners and referral partners to identify those children, and we'll begin that observation and discovery period for which children, according to our model, might benefit the most from the long-term intervention of our services. Those 16 children, again, will come from Bend and Redmond this spring. We are committed to adding an additional cohort of 16 children in South Deschutes County in spring of 26. Did you have a question? I'm happy to pause.
You mentioned 78 or 80 kids enrolled. Then you talked about these additions of 16 kids, these 2 blocks of 16 kids. Are those, is it kind of like you bring in a new cohort of 16 as 16 graduate out, or is that
not for us?
16 on top of the 8?
Correct. So as a 12.5-year long program, and because we opened our doors in the fall of 2017, our oldest children today, the original children that we enrolled in that first cohort, are completing or halfway through 7th grade. So we will add another 16. They are pretty typically kindergartners. They're between the ages of 4 and 6, every new child that we enroll. And it doesn't mean that we boot out the oldest cohort. They will stay in our program and receive the services of their professional mentor until they graduate from high school. So yes, we will grow that number from 80 today, 96 by the end of this school year, and then 112. Thank you for the math. Reminder, next spring with the second cohort down in South County. As you skim through that report, you'll see the terms grow, enhance, and build throughout. We are 1.5 years into a 5-year strategic plan focused on those 3 priorities. That growth goal being continued enrollment and support of our program throughout the county. All of that enrollment, as we grow to 128 children by 2028, will happen in Deschutes County. That said, we make the commitment to continue serving children as they move throughout the region. We often see that movement happening due to entrance into the foster care system, families finding new jobs, or being unable to afford housing in the communities where we enrolled them in. So we will continue to send their mentor to those communities as long as they're within our regional footprint. The addition of children, I'll put a number to it. Our mentors are full-time salaried employees. It is their full-time job to work with these children who come to us with significant trauma, pretty typically an ACE score of between 5 and 6, which there's a lot of data out there, but the staggering one to me continues to be that children with that ACE score by the age of 5 will have a lifespan that is 20 years shorter than their peers due to complexities and health outcomes because of that childhood trauma. So this professional mentor, it's their job to work through and to build resilience in each of these children, to teach them to persevere through the challenges that life and childhood will throw at them, and to be that constant, stable support, the person that they can lean on and go to in times of turbulence as they navigate systems, both education, welfare, child welfare, and deliver them to high school graduation with a plan for their future. That is the goal and the long-term outcome of our program, having avoided juvenile justice and becoming early parents, teen parents themselves. Nationally, we continue to see the success of our model hold true. Our long-term outcomes continue to hold at that 83% graduation rate, a 92% conversion rate into those future outcomes, entering higher education or a trade program, enlisting in the military, or becoming gainfully employed upon high school graduation. And then 93% of our children nationally avoid juvenile justice system involvement, and 98% avoid becoming teen parents. This long-term intervention has proven itself year after year for over 30 years now, and we're pretty proud to be a part of that locally here in Central Oregon. You'll see some celebrations we had in that enhancement category, making deeper and more significant investments for our youth in the world of education, mental health, family supports and connectedness, as well as adolescent programming as our children enter middle school and high school. We will continue those investments moving forward with measurable improvements for our children on educational outcomes and participation. As you might imagine, many of our children struggle to get to school. Chronic absenteeism is a thing in our program, just as it is statewide. Building in those goal setting and celebrations for children who make it to school, who are there and ready to learn, is a big part of our focus in the years ahead. We will also see continued support in literacy education. We've had the benefit of a national board certified teacher on our staff for the last nearly 2 years now. She's been running after school and summertime intensive literacy support groups, all of which we've seen big strides made by our learners who are the furthest behind when they're entering school. She's conducting the same reading assessments that our school partners are assessing, making sure we have real-time interventions and that their mentors are knowledgeable and prepared to step into that support with their children. Our mental health focus is something I'm particularly proud of. We've had a longstanding partnership with a local mental health clinic, Juniper Mountain Family Counseling, that is twofold. One, it provides prioritized access for our youth and our families as they find themselves in crises, to enter into services without fear of cost for what they need. It also provides monthly psychoeducation programming and education for our team so that our mentors who come from all kinds of backgrounds and skill spaces to build the tools in their tool belt around mental health support and trauma-informed practice. They're able to sit in the understanding of what their trauma, what the child's trauma has impacted for that youth, and deploy interventions thanks to this education that they're receiving specifically for the youth and what they're experiencing. I would never claim that they are clinicians. They are not therapists or counselors by trade, but in partnership with this clinic, they've been able to improve their skill set to provide a better level of support to our youth as they experience the day-to-day crisis of their trauma. Finally, our build focus, we own and operate out of a nearly 20-acre ranch halfway between Bend and Redmond. We have continued to invest in that property and remodeling spaces for active learning. We completed a kitchen remodel this past spring that has seen increased use from our mentors, our children, and our families as they learn to cook healthy, nutritious meals together. what it means to shop for those meals and afford them on a budget, and then how to communicate and connect with others through this shared space. We will launch into an additional project this coming spring, transforming 2 of the rooms in the house into a STEAM laboratory for that heightened experience and educational components on STEAM concepts. So science, technology, education, arts, and math will be programmed into this space. It'll feel like a classroom to our children, where they have the opportunity to bridge those concepts and deepen their learning year round. And from there, I'm happy to answer questions, but that is what we have been up to, thanks to your support.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to share your work with us today. I'm constantly amazed at the wraparound support that you provide to young people for very long periods of their life and very critical formative periods of their life. One of the things I always wonder is what is the size of the population that you are serving a slice of?
Yeah.
The young kids and families who fit the profile that you would like to be serving, and how much of that are you able to get to, essentially?
That's an excellent question. There are 2 ways that we think of that with every selection process. So one, we look at and rely on partnerships to help us identify those children. Those are school-based partnerships, principals, counselors, administrators, and teachers, fan advocates who are in a school building who understand the ideal student that we seek to identify to connect our services to. Those partnerships always yield more referrals for services than the 16 slots we have to fill. In the spring of 24, just for example, and those are, again, children in Bend and Redmond primarily, we received 39 what we call qualified referrals for 16 slots. I would love to be able to hire more people to be able to serve every child that is referred to us, but it is a funding hurdle that we are faced with every year. The other maybe more broad data point that I can share is a study from OHSU, and I don't have the name of the study off the top of my head, but I will follow up and share that via email with Jen. That was conducted, I believe, fall of 2020, perhaps 2021, that measured the number of children in a county, and it broke down age groups 0 to 5, 6 to 11, 12 to 18, that had a minimum of 3 ACEs, so a little bit lower than our average, but they also had a health complexity. And those numbers for our region, for each of those age groupings, were in the hundreds. For us to say, to whittle them down, to say children between the ages of 4 and 6 who had 3 ACEs and a health complexity, we'd probably be looking at a couple of hundred tri-county wide in any given year. So that was a snapshot. And I'd be surprised if that number has decreased since that study was conducted. I imagine the gulf we are seeing in child poverty in our community has only widened that gap and increased those numbers in the last few years.
So when you mention ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, and how they do compound, and it can really, stunt development. So I do support that whole scenario, and thank you very much for using that as kind of a measurement there. And congratulations on growing and being stable and providing these services in our community. Once again, this is our kind of pre-budget discussion about getting these into our budget, so the money's coming again next year.
Appreciate that.
Thanks
Appreciate
for what
that
you're
very
doing.
much. I also, let me just take the opportunity to say, I know that support for funding like our programs and other nonprofit partners was on the chopping block last year, and you reinstated much of that. So let me express gratitude on behalf of all of those partners for renewing and reestablishing that funding. We do important work, and we appreciate your support.
I don't know if you were here when the EDCO folks were presenting on large renewable project development investments, but one of the things that many of our fellow counties across Eastern Oregon are doing when they get these $1 million chunks of investment from renewable energy projects is investing them in youth programming. So that was one of the things I was angling for.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that tip.
Well, and yeah, our finances, we had the ARPA dollars and we had some, kind of grease in the system that may not be there as much in the near future. So it is a tough decision sometimes.
Understood. I just am here to say thank you for the continued support year over year. It means a lot to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, item number 9, Treasury Report for December 2024. So halfway through the fiscal year.
Morning,
Welcome.
Commissioners. For the record, Bill Coon, Deschutes County Treasurer. I first wanted to appreciate the acknowledgement of R.L. Grigas and his many contributions to Deschutes County. I personally have been involved with a couple of nonprofit organizations that he has graciously volunteered his efforts over many years. So again, he will continue to be in the area and still support the needs of the community, but very appreciative of that.
Saw him at the Fair Association meeting, and he said, "I'm so busy with the elk foundations around the state." So yeah, his day
That's
job
one
probably got in the way of some
organization
stuff.
involved with for
Yep.
years, and he does it all free gratis, has
Yep.
been up until now. So I'm very appreciative of that. Again, thanks for the opportunity to allow me to present the December Treasurer's Report. And typically what I do is I provide a few kind of high-level overview of economic conditions we've been dealing with here recently. Current focus obviously is very much on news coming out of Washington as our newly elected President Donald Trump continues to vet cabinet nominees along with a flurry of executive orders issued since Monday. What we've seen is financial markets have somewhat moderated from the initial Trump bump, with expectations that his administration will focus on reducing regulations and implementing more favorable tax policies. The bond markets have also seen continued pressure on yields as Trump outlined several key agenda items for his incoming administration, including a focus on higher tariffs, more stringent immigration restrictions, and ramping up domestic energy production, which is very timely as we talked about the renewal of the Rural Renewable Energy Development Zone. And one of his comments yesterday was initial focus on about a $500 billion investment in artificial intelligence, which means increasing energy needs with the demand for additional data storage centers. So again, very timely there, and it kind of ties into what's actually happening with some of the proposed focuses for his new administration. The use of tariffs is likely to be implemented more slowly, and that's been a change over the last several weeks to secure better trade deals and also to encourage cooperation on some of the illegal immigration actions that he's focused on. A couple of things, follow up from late last month. We were approaching a deadline on a continuing resolution that expired on December 20th. And we literally resolved that on I wouldn't say the 11th hour, I think it was the 12th hour. But Speaker Mike Johnson was able to elicit sufficient congregational support, barely at the 11th hour, to extend this latest continuing resolution to March 14th. Now it's a new deadline, 2025. So kick the can down the street a couple of months to allow the newly elected Congress to address a longer-term funding budget. Also, and I mentioned this last month as well, the U.S. government hit its roughly 36 million or trillion debt limit yesterday, with the Treasury Department now forced to take extraordinary measures to allow the government to pay its bills. These measures include suspending payments to some government employee savings plans, underinvesting in certain government funds, and also delaying bond auctions. So that could have an immediate impact there as they kind of manage that upper cap. Reaching this cap ramps up the pressure on lawmakers to adopt a remedy, which means either suspending the ceiling, which they've done previously, or increasing that ceiling to a new level of perceived control. How they go about doing that, obviously, any changes to the debt ceiling metrics require majority approval in the House and 60 approval votes in the Senate. And I think it's interesting to note, too, that our U.S. debt has nearly tripled since 2009, just to give you more of a broader-based focus on what our national debt has done. Related to the economy, U.S. jobs growth surged last month while unemployment levels dropped. Employers added 256,000 jobs last month, which was up from 212,000 in November. Conversely, the unemployment rate dropped from 4.2% in November down to 4.1% in December. The final jobs report for 2024 reinforced the ongoing strength of the economy and challenges that the Fed faces in enacting further reductions in inflation. It's interesting, too, to note that there's been a couple of really big ticket items that have occurred over the last several months, catastrophic events, including the continued impact from Hurricane Helene, which resulted in damage and economic losses between $225 and $250 billion, and also the ongoing impacts from the wildfires in Los Angeles. And the latest preliminary estimates that I've seen are estimating up to $250 billion and counting. To put this in perspective, total damage and economic losses from these fires could reach 4% of the annual GDP for the state of California. So significant impact. Not sure how that's going to convey into the current economic situation, but it's certainly something we want to continue to watch. On a yearly basis, the December CPI rose to 2.9%, which was up from 2.7% in November, which was higher than forecasted, with concerns over consistent or persistent pressures on housing costs, which again accounted for 40% of this increase. As expected, in December, the Fed reduced its key short-term rate by another 25 basis points. However, the Fed has communicated its expectation to slow its pace of rate reductions into 2025 due to concerns over still elevated inflationary pressures. And now Wall Street is forecasting only 2 rate cuts in 2025. And the next FOMC meeting is scheduled for January 28th and 29th, with the market currently not expecting any rate adjustment to come out of that meeting. And again, as a reminder, rate policy is really the only tool that the Fed has in its toolbox to impact inflationary pressures on the economy. From a manufacturing perspective, the producer price index increased to 3.3% year over year, which was higher than analyst expectations and marked continuing inflationary demand for goods. And the most recent average 30-year mortgage rate has increased significantly since early to mid-December. It's up about 30 basis points, and it's currently at about 7.11%. Rates are expected to be volatile as the market digests the impact from these proposed economic policies that are coming out of the new administration. Housing starts in December unexpectedly jumped 15.8%. Pulling the annual pace from 1.29 million up to over 1.3 million annually, which is a 4-month high. And starts were expected to rise only 3% in December, so a significant increase there. At a regional level, I usually provide data on several markets within Deschutes County. The Bend single-family market showed a median sales price, which again has half of the sales were higher than this point and half were lower than that point. 700,000 in December, which was flat with prior month. And what we've seen over the last several months is that there's been fewer home sales in the sold category of $1 million plus. So I think that number is now a little bit more realistic in terms of targeting what that kind of middle market sales price is for the city of Bend. They had reported 105 total sales for the month of December, but only 29 sales, or 28% of the total, were over $1 million, and 38 of these were cash sales. So we continue to see a large number of sales that are cash sales that aren't impacted by the recent increases in mortgage rates. There's now a 2.5 months supply of homes currently listed, with 45 days listing for sold properties. And we noted in December that Bend area single-family home building permits were flat at 57 for the month, compared to 53 in the month of November. Redmond statistics for the year show similar trends, with the current median sales price $498,000 for December, which is virtually flat with the $491,000 that was reported in November. And Redmond area permits dropped to 14 in December, which was down significantly from 39 in the prior month. Looking at other markets within Deschutes County, Sisters, 712,000 was the median sales price. Sun River, very narrow number of sales, only 3 sales, but the median was $1,175,000, and La Pine was at 360,000. So any questions on the economic activity there?
No questions, but yeah, thanks for just that big rundown. I mean, that really helps because, I read and see different things in the newspaper, the radio, or the TV, and then this really puts it all
not
together.
a problem. And I, obviously the focus is what is the impact going to be on certainly inflation and the rate environment. And that rate environment has an impact, a significant impact on housing activity in Central Oregon, which continues to be a major economic driver. And then also we've reaped the benefit of higher yields in recent investing activity. So this bump in longer term yields, because of concerns about continued inflationary environment, has had a positive impact in terms of what we've been able to recoup some of the investment activity that we've done here recently.
So I always think back, we were just talking about this recently, my wife and I, when we bought our first house in about 95, I think the interest rate was like 6%, but that was the market. It wasn't shocking. It was probably coming down a little bit, or it had been around that for a long time. So it just was what it was, and now it just feels so painful at 7 because it was 2 and 3 and 4 for so many years. So it's just interesting dynamics.
Well, there's still a number of people that are on the sideline right now because they have extremely attractive mortgage rate on their current mortgage.
Yeah.
Which prevents them from considering any kind of upgrades. They don't want to lose that mortgage.
But yeah, inflation and the cost of construction and just everything is way up too. So these are 2 and 3 times more than we even paid for that first house. Yep.
Yeah. 6% mortgage now, when you need to borrow hundreds of thousands more, is a lot more painful.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll continue to see the impact of higher mortgage rates, and a lot of folks are actually going to adjustable rate mortgages right now and kind of taking a chance. It'll be a more favorable opportunity to refinance in the not too distant future, but unfortunately, we haven't seen it yet. And go ahead.
Well, and that happened to us when I think when we moved to this area back in the day, 2003, 4, 5, we did have an adjustable rate, and it went down because of the recession. So we ended up benefiting on that. Interesting.
Yeah, we certainly don't want to forecast a recession in the future.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it would have
the impact.
Unexpected, but that happened.
But, the Fed has a very challenging job right now in terms of managing this balancing act between economic activity and long-term and short-term rates. And that does have an impact on longer-term rates as well. So anyway, without further ado, I'll dive into the December Treasurer's Report. The portfolio balance as of month end was 365.7 million, which was a decrease of 7.9 million from November. And this decline is primarily due to seasonal timing of tax turnover and obviously spending as well. Net investment earnings were 1,172,000 for the month, which was 137,000 lower than last month's earnings. Part of that is just a decline in the mortgage or the portfolio balance, but it was 214,000 higher than a year ago. I will note that we are starting to see the impact of reductions in short-term rates in both our LGIP pool and also the rates that's being offered by First Interstate Bank and the funds that we hold with them as well. All portfolio category balances are well within policy guidelines. Talking about rate reductions, the LGIP rate reduced to 4.85% at month end, which was down from 5% in the prior month. With recent investment activity, the portfolio now has a weighted term to maturity of 1.07 years. So we're pushing that back out again. And the maximum maturity currently in the portfolio is out to about 3.5 years right now. That was intentional to try to take advantage of some of these longer term rates. The time to maturity is again somewhat skewed by courthouse funding that was invested to match the expected funding need. And I also want to point out that we had a little glitch in the graph that I prepare on the 5-year maturity schedule. August 2027 maturities were actually reported in the September 2027 column. So that's now been fixed. It's not like we don't have any maturities that were maturing in August. I just had a little glitch in that graph. And so everything actually moved forward there.
Basically,
and then
those columns, if we just bump.
yeah, you
those
see that
columns
little gap that
back
just
1 month.
move everything from August forward one column, and that has been corrected. So again, if you're wondering if we had any investments maturing in that time period, we absolutely do. And we're again trying to push out this latest round of investing targeted December 2027 to roughly May of 2028. So continuing to push out that 3-year maturity date to ensure that we have continued redemptions to continue to fund operations for Deschutes County. So, and again, still roughly targeting about 40 million in short-term liquidity, which is yielding the LGIP rate. We also were recently notified by the State Treasurer's Office that the LGIP rate reduced to 4.7% in early January. And then also the First Interstate Bank is also reducing its short-term rate to 4.3%. So that's been expected for a while. It was actually delayed a little bit from what I thought they would actually adjust rates to. But again, part of that was just the fact that the Fed hasn't been as aggressive about lowering rates recently. And I think we're going to probably see that into 2025 as well. So any questions regarding this report?
Looks like all the kind of interest rates are converging on the 4 different rate lines you have there, because sometimes they're way off. So that's interesting.
They are. Yeah, starting to see again, corporate rates are, we don't invest heavily in corporate bond investments, but they tend to skew a little bit because they're adjusted to risk. So anyway, we have a very narrow investment profile that we're allowed to invest in by our investment policy.
When stock market is up again, I don't know if it's enthusiasm or reality. That's an interesting dynamic.
Well, I think a lot of the bump that we've seen over the last day or so was Trump's announcement that he's going to go slow on the tariffs. And I think initially there was a lot of concern that he was going to get very aggressive in boosting tariffs, which obviously would increase the cost of goods for virtually everything. And I think there was a real concern that would, in and of itself, result in pressures to slow the economy down. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And next is our financial report for December 2024. Halfway through the fiscal year.
Morning, commissioners.
For the record, Robert Tintel, Chief Financial Officer. So yes, we are here to present the December 1st, 2024 financial report. Before I do, just a quick reminder that next Monday will be the board's annual retreat, in that we will be talking about the fiscal year 26 budget preparation for during that time. And so today, as I go through the financial report, I will point out a few things that may be related to some of the items we'll discuss on Monday, just as a point of reference when we talk about some of the items on Monday. And you do have next Monday, you do have a packet, or I guess it's coming Monday now. You do have a packet, and it's posted online, available already for those viewing and watching at home, for the items that we will be talking at the board retreat regarding the budget. So in front of you in your packet, hopefully you have on page 84 is the beginning of the finance report for December 2024. Again, these are unaudited numbers. Revenue year to date in the general fund is the first dashboard graph that we usually present. The general fund is 46.8 million, or 90.5% of the budget. Last year at this time it was 89%. So 89-90, we're right on target with our percent of revenue that we would anticipate. Expenses are 18.6 million, or 35% of the budget. Comparison last year, they were 21.8 million, or 47.2% of the budget. However, if you take out transfers and just look at our expenses, this year they're 12.6 million. Last year they were 11.5. So it's only increased about $1 million, while our revenues increased about 7 million over that same period. So we're on trend, on target. So the general fund is looking good there. Next, page 85 is the position control summary. Again, one thing with this report, year to date, the far right bottom number is 10.5%. Again, we've been averaging about 10% in our vacancy savings. Some of these are positions that can't be filled, or, we haven't been able to fill, but as we'll talk about also in the budget presentation, is some of these are positions that are purposely held vacant for reasons. So as you go through this list, the top part is the general fund orgs, or departments, or divisions for that use general fund funding. So you can see here, I'll just use an example. The top line, the assessor is experiencing a 17.87% vacancy savings thus far in the year, and this is a half year data. The clerk, 14%. I'll skip Bob. The DA, 3.65, 0% in tax, and down the list. So in total, it's about 8% vacancy savings. And again, traditionally, there is a vacancy savings within most funds. Obviously, the larger departments is where you'll see more vacancy savings. Smaller departments that only have one or two or a few staff, unless they have turnover, they won't receive any. But larger departments, people you're usually promoting or moving on to other positions. And so as we go down there, the total FTE at the bottom is 1,256.46. That is a 3.0 increase over the last year. Sorry, over the last month. Health Services did add, and the board approved, a psychiatric nurse practitioner and a psychiatrist. And that was, as a reminder, the transition of 2 telehealth contracted providers into regular FTE. And then CDD added an on-site wastewater specialist.
What about the open position for houseless effort? It's just 1.0 is still there. Is that the coordinated houseless response office, and there's changes there? Is that going away maybe just next fiscal year? I don't know what. Does it need to be there anymore?
I think that'll be a discussion that'll occur. I'm not aware of what the.
But I mean, I don't think of that as a position anymore, but it's still here.
We have no intention of filling it.
Yeah.
Exactly right. We need to eliminate the.
Yeah. So next year's budget, maybe, if we're not doing it before, that's fine.
We still haven't nailed down where the coordinated homeless response office is going to live. So, I mean, maybe that's just a reminder for us that it's still an outstanding question.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, page 86 in your packet is the overtime report. So as of today, as of December 31st, which we're only half the year, no funds are over budget, which you wouldn't expect, being over budget only half a year in their total personnel costs. There are 3 funds that project to be over by the end of the year, and those are identified with the red X there. However, will have a budget adjustment coming before the end of the year so they don't go over budget. There are two funds in the overtime column, and there's smaller amounts that have gone over how much they had budgeted for overtime. However, again, they're not over their total personnel costs. So there is no budget violation in those categories. Going to skip ahead to a few pages, page 91. It's the general fund. And with this total revenues, total resources, the far number on the right, you'll see it's 523,000 more than expected. There's a footnote C on that item, and that's related to opioid dollars that we have moved from health services over to the general fund. So they weren't originally budgeted, but that's why we're anticipating more revenue in that area than what we anticipated there. As we go down the requirements or the expenditure side, and it's listed by department. So this is where we're at 6 months and where departments are projecting to be at the end by the end of the fiscal year. So again, I'll just look at the first line there for the assessor's office. Their total budget is 6.7 million. Actuals to date as of December is 2.8 million, but they project by the end of the year, they're going to be at $5.9 million. That will leave a variance of $821,000. So that's the projection today. Obviously, it could change. It could be higher. It could be lower as we go through the second half of the year. If there's vacancies there and they fill them. But I've referenced that as it's 821,000 expected variance at this point. As we talk about next fiscal year, their limited growth target, the savings that we're asking for the assessor's office is 223,000. So when we talk about, can you use, and this applies to any department, I just happen to be referencing this department. Are there vacancy savings that you can utilize? Can you right size your budget? This is where we're working with departments and saying, even in this fiscal year, you have your full budget authority. You're not anticipating to spend it. So can you reduce your budget without impacting services to absorb your limited growth target savings? And that goes down the list. The next one, the clerk's office, they're projecting to be $92,000 over budget, a savings this fiscal year. Their limited growth target for next year is 63,000. And again, we'll be talking about the limited growth items on Monday, but I just wanted a point of reference that as you review the financial report, you can see how some departments may more easily than others be able to absorb some additional savings while others may not.
So Robert, are you saying you're encouraging them to try to get to their new lower number this year, or that they'll be able to use their larger beginning working capital against their needed savings next year, or something else?
No, we're not asking them to necessarily change their business practices this year. Although we did, even in this, when we were preparing for this year, we did ask all departments, be mindful, knowing that, we were tightening the belt, so to speak, this upcoming year. So as you think about expenditures, what's necessary, continue to do what's necessary. If there's something that can be held off on, maybe you might want to keep it open. We did ask during positions, departments, we asked about positions as well. Is this a position that, knowing if there were reductions next year, or if there were limited growth next year, I should say, would you still want to fill this at this time or this early? And so just thinking about those decisions. The point with this is departments typically have had savings within their budget. They haven't expended their full budget authority. So, and that's one of the questions in the detailed sheets you'll see in the materials is, what has your history been with how much of your budget have you spent it? Have you spent 90%, 95, 100%? Some departments have typically spent all their budget authority. And so that would be more of a challenge to reach it. But if you've typically only spent 90, 95% of your budget, that means there is some right sizing which within your budget you might be able to accomplish without affecting service. So that's where this, again, you can see some of the departments will have a variance by the end of the year, and others won't. Obviously they won't be able to go over budget, so we'll look at that by the end. But there is some flexibility there. So total requirements for the general fund, we're expecting by the end of the year, we will save $2.8 million collectively from what we budgeted. And most of that is due to vacancy savings or unfilled positions. As we get to the end,
Well,
total. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm already, it's good to understand how this will kind of shake out who's generally in that limited growth fits already and which ones we're going to struggle with. So as I say, just today, it's already good to kind of think like that. So thank you for your professionalism in getting us here even.
Okay, thank you. And again, this year is not an indicator. You may have a vacancy savings this year and you might not next year, but it's at least 1 point of time. The very last line, total fund balance, we are expecting 4.5 million over budget will end more positive than what we were thinking. However, if you look at the footnote, this overage is really due to the transferring of ARPA funds to the general fund, you know, the reserve, that revenue replacement we moved over. So we're holding that money within the general fund. That's the $3.9 million and also $1.3 million in opioid settlement funds are in there too. So that's what makes up that. And so those will be programmed out in future years. Just want to point that out at this point. So the next page, juvenile, page 92, Fund 030, their revenues seem to be on target and their total requirements, which their expenditures for personnel, M&S, and capital, they're anticipating will end the year at 8.5 million, or they'll have a savings of $850,000. That's that far column. Their vacancy savings is $793,000. Their target, limited growth target for juvenile community justice is $301,000. However, they do have a full $600,000 funding gap. And again, we'll talk about that on Monday. But I wanted to point out in this fund, you can see their total resources. Their budget is $926,000. That's up at the top. That's all revenue outside of the general fund. However, if you go down to under the transfers in general fund, you can see their general fund transfer budget is $8 million. So out of their total of $9 million of revenue, $8 million of it is directly from the general fund. $1 million is from other funding sources. So as we look for a general growth target savings of 300,000 from that 8 million, their other funding gap comes from a reduction from their other sources up above. So again, just kind of setting the stage for some of the discussion next year or next Monday. Okay, next page, 93, TRT Fund 160, 170. Total projection by the end of the year, the last line in there, right now it's about $1.1 million. Again, we're striving to get to a target of $1.5 million. If we don't get it all this year, it'll be next year. And that's because we want to create a reserve of the 1 year's, the debt service for $1.5 million. The budget, the good news is the budget right now, we had a good December actuals, which is November activity that we receive in December. So December was up 6.9% from the prior year, which was good because we were trending lower in all those previous months. So now year to date, we're still 1% down from last year actuals. However, since we reduced our budget by $500,000 over the prior year, that means we're up 1.3% to budget. So year to date, the activity is down, but since we did lower our budget, we're up 1% from budget. So it is better. We were a little more conservative in the budget that we're beating it, but we are still down from last year's activity.
But it's good to be above budget.
Exactly. So I'll move to page 96, Sheriff's Office, Fund 255. Their resources, their revenues are about on target as you look at their projection columns and their variance. If you look at their total requirements, halfway down the page, they're looking at their budget is 66 million. Their projection is they'll end up at 63 million. So that will save them about $3 million they're projecting. And again, most of those are vacancy savings within their department as well. So they'll end the year about $3 million more than what they were anticipating. And so through as well. And just a heads up, the finance is working with the sheriff's office as well to help them with some of the activities within their department. They're a little short staffed, so we've offered to help them. They've asked and we've offered to assist. And so we're assisting them with some of their day-to-day activities as well.
Great, thank you.
Next page, 97, we'll get into Health Services, Fund 274. The first page there, 97 is the overview of their various sections. One item on here, not on here, is their OHP reserve, a separate fund, 270. It's currently at 28.8 million. They're projecting by the end of the year to be at $34 million on their reserve funds. But now I will go through their funds a little in detail. Fund 274, their admin, it's on target. I'm not going to necessarily speak to that one. Same with Behavioral Health Fund 274. The next page on page 99, their revenues and final variance total fund balance projection. The budget was 2.7 million. They project to be at 2.8 million. So I about on target there for them. But I do want to focus on page 100, which is Health Services, Public Health within Fund 274, as it relates again to our upcoming discussions that we're going to have. So if you look at their total resources, the bottom line in the middle there, their budget is $12.4 million. And that's at the top. You can see all the various funding sources within that fund of $12.4 million. If you go down the couple tables under transfers, the first line you can see transfers in general fund is $5 million. So this one has the opposite effect that we saw with juvenile is, so their total revenues are $12 million of other revenues. The general fund provides $5 million there and to equal their total revenues. So if you look at this fund at the total fund balance at the end, their budget was $1.9 million ending fund balance. They are projecting to be at 2.8 million, which is about 900,000 more than they were anticipating. Now their revenue does roll over and stay within their fund, where I meant to say it when we were talking about the general fund, there's a savings within the general fund that just rolls back to the general fund. It doesn't stay within the department. But here within these funds, if you have a savings in one year, it does roll over to the next year. So as we look at that general fund transfer in line of $5.1 million, their limited growth target is $190,000 because of the limited 3.3% within the general fund. However, and they'll have an opportunity to talk about this, their funding gap is 1.4 million. And again, you can see it's because they have a lot of additional revenues up above. And if those are coming in differently, and yet the general fund is staying within that 3.3% target, they have additional funding gap beyond just the limited growth target. And that's where the breakout is there. Next page, Fund 295, which is page 101. And I know the board gets the activity report. I think Sherry Pinner, the last report that was there, she did say after 2 years of declining permit volumes, the December new development activity report reflects an increase in permitting volumes in single-family dwelling permits and applications. So that was, a bit of good news right there. But land use applications were stable, but they were still reflect a decrease from last year. And their finances are in there, and they're still within that. They try to maintain that $1 million projected target at their ending fund balance. And so they are now looking to be a little 66,000 better than what they were projecting previously. I'll go to page 103, Adult Parole and Probation Fund 355. Again, I just want to put this in focus for our upcoming discussion on Monday. Their total resources, their total budget is $6.3 million, and this is other revenue sources. If you scroll down or roll down a little bit in the other table, transfers in from general funds, you can see their budget is $703,000. So 6.3 million in other revenue, 700,000 from the general fund. Their limited growth target savings is 26,000. So 26,000 of the 703. However, again, they have a $600,000 total funding gap, again, because the majority of the revenues are outside of the general fund as well. And they are expecting to be $1 million more positive in savings this year than what they anticipated. But that, again, is due to vacancy savings, and they were purposely holding some positions vacant, knowing of some of the financial challenges they'll be having.
Robert, what was their limited growth target again?
26,000. However, their total funding gap is 600,000. Solid waste, again, the next few pages have been similar from previous months. I'm going to skip past these and move to the near the end, risk management, page 113, Fund 670. Actually, there's not a lot of change here in the resources or expenditures. The total fund balance projection did decrease at the end. Last month, we reported 296,000. This month, it's 22,000, excuse me. That's because we did the cleanup with the beginning working capital. And so there was an adjustment there of $168,000. Just wanted to point that out in that fund, not material. Health Benefits Fund, 675, page 114 in your packet. So if we look down at the bottom line, total fund balance, you can see our budget is 7.8 million, where we hope to end by the end of the year. Currently, as of December 31st, it's 9.6 million or 9.7 million. But we are doing better than budget at this point. We are projecting we'll be at 8.1 million by the end of the year. Last month, we were at 7.9 projecting. So the last couple of months, we've been bringing that up. We have looked at our December activity. From what we hear from our claims provider, our benefit provider, December, they usually see a spike because people go at the end of the year. They want to use their flexible spending plan. They want to get those things in. So December did go up, but we're still experiencing year to date a decrease from the prior year by about 1% in our health claims costs. So we're staying on target. We still have a long way to go in this fund, but we are monitoring that and watching that. And the budgets have been reflected with the board's action previously on, we made changes to some of the revenues and expenditures, and the new budget, the revised budget, is now reflected here. That's why in the revenues, you don't see any discrepancies now, or in the expenditures, the variance column is all cleaned up because it now reflects that changed budget.
Robert, can you remind me, what is our goal in terms of a kind of a fund balance that we carry as a cushion?
Yeah, right now it's about $8 million. So it is $8 million. So that's why the budget and the projection, we're feeling pretty good at this point in time.
Policy is 8 million.
Yes. Yeah. So, and that the amount will go up because the policy, it's based on percentages. And so as your expenditures grow up, we will increase that contingency requirement a little, but it's $8 million about right now. Finally, last fund, 115, not a lot of changes, or there weren't really changes in the resources or requirements. Again, the final number, total fund balance, will end at $12.5 million, projecting at the end of the year to equal 729,000. Last month, it is 1.2 million lower, but because we did a cleanup with their beginning fund balance, you can see the variance is now 0, but it's just adjusting that to where it is. But otherwise, the revenues and expenditures are on target. With that, I know I went through a lot, and we'll talk a lot more in detail on Monday about some of the general fund items, but any other questions I could answer for you right now?
Nope. Thank you so much. Okay, other items for this meeting. I got a letter from the presiding judge about mock trial competition to be scheduled for March 1st on Saturday. So it's just a request to have that courthouse available. The front doors open for the mock trial for the youth. I don't know that there's other than acknowledging it, it's not an approval or anything. So any other?
No, commissioners, we will proceed unless the commission have concerns or don't support our providing the facility.
So yeah, we'll welcome the youth mock trial on March 1st, 2025 at our Deschutes County Courthouse. I think, maybe our legal counsel's involved with that a little bit. I think Dave is. So.
Jen Patterson has.
Oh, okay.
For us. Is this the?
What?
Is this the real ADU?
No, this is
DEQ.
DEQ.
DEQ, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Can piggyback on this and just, in terms of other items, just mention that the hearing for this bill, House Bill 2168, was this morning. AOC and committee staff asked me if I would testify on this. And so I both testified that this technical and financial assistance for people whose wells have gone dry is helpful. And I said it would also be really helpful if they created technical and financial assistance for exempt well properties in advance of when they went dry. Noting that basically if you help people reduce the amount of water they use by thousands of gallons a week before their well goes dry, you actually make it less likely that their well will ever go dry, and also you provide benefits regionally for groundwater resources.
So one of the reference points I have is just the concept that there is a standard set of wells that will age over time with sediment, pump failures, collapsing, walls possibly. So my point is, I mean, for every well that goes dry, some of them, it's just a natural cycle of having a hole deep in the ground that has water coming out of it. So.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if that accounts for 200 wells going dry in 2022 and 2023 in Deschutes County, but
it was mentioned that 100 wells traditionally go dry. So so if it's double right now, that's a point. But I mean, if 100 are kind of naturally just aging and failing, let's not.
Who said 100 are failing per year? Well, like where does that data come from?
Ned Dempsey is our experienced water guy here in Central Oregon from Century West Engineering. So he just pointed out that all wells aren't going dry because of these conditions. There's always a subset of wells that'll fail over time, just naturally. So, I mean, it seems
the 200 that were reported to the Water Resources Department in that period were specifically because of groundwater level declines that left them high and dry.
I'm supportive of this letter.
Okay, great. Commissioner Adair, who is not here today, also indicated via email that she's in support of signing this letter as well. And there was the hearing this morning, and we can submit, the county can choose to submit a letter of support within 48 hours of the start of the hearing time.
If you want to make a motion.
I would move approval of this letter supporting House Bill 2168 to the House Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
And I will second it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Thank you.
Great. And do you want to sign, both of you sign one of the letters there, and then I can scan it and we can get Commissioner Adair. So I'll send it over to Brenda.
Here we go. So that was it for one letter for today. Well, and thank you for testifying on that matter, Commissioner Chang. Anything else, other items?
One other thing I'll report. Yesterday, I went to the ribbon cutting for the Nova Apartments in Redmond. So this is a refurbished former motel that used to be the Village Squire. Hayden Development, or Watson Developments, and their partners at Hayden Homes did an amazing job of converting that old motel to I believe it was 24 micro units, which are going to provide a landing place for people who are coming to town to go to work for BaseX or go to work for RPA or places like that. And I will be very interested to see what the demand for those units is, because in terms of kind of the profile, the very small size studio apartment available. It really reminded me of that. It was called the hiatus homes development that they brought to us, requesting a tax exemption. If there's good uptake on those units in Redmond, we really don't have anything like this, tiny studio apartments. If there's good uptake on those units, I think it indicates that there actually would be demand for something like a hiatus homes micro unit development in Bend.
At that same time, I was at the 911 user board meeting, so just representing as a commissioner. So 911, one of the interesting notes is the fact that, there was some radio tower enhancement projects out there that has been through the fiscal years, but there's no near term ones going to be started. So they're basically just finishing those. One of them is at the road department. So I don't know, Monday we can see, I think there's a new tower out there that I haven't seen yet. So we'll at least see it from the parking lot, maybe. Things are going well at 911. I think that was it. Anything else? Seeing none, executive session.
The Deschutes County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660. The specific authorization for this executive session is ORS 192.660 subsection 2E, which allows the board to meet in executive session in order to discuss real property negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain during the executive session. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the identified basis for meeting in the executive session. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made in executive session, and at the conclusion, we will open the doors and invite the audience back to the meeting.
Thank you very much. So we'll come back after these executive sessions on the video. just, yeah, video or? Yeah. There we go. So just acknowledging we're out of executive session. Is there anything else for this board meeting? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.